Hi there. Welcome to Bourbon Turntable. We are the show that blends the love of whiskey with the love of music. And with me tonight, as always, is my good friend Drew Crawley. Drew, what's up, buddy?
Howdy, y'all. Oh, not a whole lot. Just a good weekend at home, relaxing, hanging with the puppy. Been a good one.
Yeah. Now, you've got some good music stuff going on here, so tell us about that.
Yeah, so my first EP, Tower Songs, is still available wherever you listen to music. That record is very personal to me, and if you would stream that, that would mean a great deal. But I've also got another project that we have begun work on. The first single of which is out now. It's called Stuck, and it's available anywhere that you listen to music. So Apple Music, Spotify, YouTube, and then we have all kinds of hopefully very exciting things to announce soon. So an acoustic EP, some more music, and then some live dates. So follow along on my social media, particularly Instagram, to find all that stuff out. So yeah, thank you.
Great stuff. Great stuff. So, if you tuned in last week, you heard part one of our conversation with Steve Gorman, the drummer for the Black Crowes and Trigger Hippy, as well as many, many other endeavors. He's a pretty busy guy. So, tonight we are going to have for you part two of that conversation, where Steve will be getting into more detail about his time with the Black Crowes, their music, kind of the dysfunction of the band. They were once called the most rock and roll band of all time for a lot of different reasons. Talk about touring with Jimmy Page and some Robert Plant stuff. It's some really fun conversation. You will not want to miss it. So just stay tuned for a couple minutes. We'll get to that shortly. But before we do that, we want to tell you about the Bar Cart Co-op. We are a part of the Bar Cart Co-op. Bar Cart is a group of friends that love to produce wonderful content for the whiskey consumer. We have Distillers Talk, which is with Alan Bishop and Christy Atkinson. They'll talk with distillers from all across the country and really around the world, actually. Those shows usually drop on Thursdays or Fridays each week. We have My Whiskey Den, where craft whiskey is king. That airs on Monday nights at 9 o'clock with Patrick and Mike and Ben. And then you have our show, Bourbon Turntable, which you will not want to miss because we have great shows like this one. One other thing, on Bar Cart, Alan Bishop has started a show called If You Have Ghosts, You Have Everything, which gets into literally the spirit side of the spirits industry. And I think so far he's done one show. It was really great. Talked about some of the background behind Lee W. Sinclair. So if you've not listened to that yet, check that out. Follow Alan on social media. Follow Bar Cart on Facebook, and you'll be sure to not miss any of those. But we also have one very important announcement that we want to share with you.
Don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe. Hit that bell notification to find out when new episodes are coming out, which do come out every single Wednesday on all of the services: Spotify, Apple Music, Google, maybe Amazon, definitely YouTube. And always hit that like button, but hit it an odd number of times, so then that way it stays as a like.
Thanks, Mike. We always appreciate your contribution to the show. So before we get into our conversation with Steve, we're going to drink a little whiskey because that's what we do on side A of the show. So, Drew, what are you drinking tonight?
Yeah. So our good friend Mike is known for his kindness and sample sending and sharing. So I'm drinking something he sent me a while back. This is the Iron Root Hubris, the Hazmat edition. So it's getting up there in age, especially for the Texas whiskeys, but it is 70.3. So if my math doesn't fail me, that's 140.6 proof. So I couldn't bear to drink Old Crow to stay on theme. So I thought, what better way to be badass and rock and roll for part two of the show than some Hazmat whiskey?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
It's pretty phenomenal stuff for those that haven't had it. Iron Root out of Texas. They're kind of setting the pace, I feel like, for a lot of Texas whiskeys.
Yep.
And so this one, it is just a honey bomb. You could tell me this came straight out of a beehive, and I would believe you. There's quite a bit of kind of a, not cinnamon, but sort of like cardamom baking spice kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
It really is like just honey for days. Now, as I add water to it throughout the evening, I'm sure that'll open up and change a little bit. But right now, I'm just enjoying all the hazmat goodness.
All right. Well, I am drinking something from Glens Creek over in Frankfort, Kentucky. Cuervito Vivo, which is translated the live crow. So thought that would be appropriate for our conversation with Steve, talking about the black crows. So without further ado, cheers to the show. Cheers to Drew. Cheers to Steve Gorman.
Cheers.
Awesome.
Well, I want to set up a story for you, and I'll preface it by saying it's one of my favorite stories in music, otherwise or whatever. Young Steve Gorman is a senior at Western Kentucky University in Bowling Green, and decides he's going to go to Atlanta and be a rock and roll drummer.
You see, I have to pour another drink for this one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
So
I can't wait to hear how this turns out. What happened next?
I'll let you. I'll hand that baton to you, and because I know you. I've heard you tell it, and you tell it really well. Obviously, so take the story from that point and share with everybody what your depth of experience was as a rock and roll drummer when you made this decision.
I had been, I'd been playing a lot of really big gigs for years in my head. I was one of the world's great air drummers up until that point. So from the time I got that Bee Gees album 2 years on until 1983, I walked around as if I were already in the modern day Led Zeppelin. I was a drummer in my own head. Listening to records, obsessing over records, and thinking about drums and how they fit and which drummers moved me the most. And it's funny. I look back now and I still like my favorite drummers as a kid when I quote unquote didn't know anything. They're all still my favorite drummers. So it just goes to show you do kind of know like what you know, if it's something you were just that means a lot to you, what your taste is your taste. And you're right. You know, that's the great thing about music. You know, my favorite band and your favorite band may be very different, but we're both right, you know?
Right.
So I got to college in the fall of '83 and met a kid who had a drum kit. And I said, hey, I got some friends that are talking about doing a party and playing some covers, and I'm supposed to be the drummer. Can I borrow your drums? And he said, sure. And so, I'll go back. When I was in 12th grade in high school, a buddy of mine had a drum kit in Hopkinsville, and I sat at that kit one day and I just immediately started playing it. Like I knew how to play. I'd been watching and thinking about it forever. And I played along. I put on headphones, and he had a stereo with good headphones and a cassette, and I played along to Kashmir. I don't recommend anybody pick Bonham right out of the gate, but I did. And at least initially I could hang with it, you know, and then it got a little beyond my skill set. But it was just a matter of playing and recognizing, oh, I knew I could do that. Like right. I thought it was that simple to me. It's like, God, I knew yeah, right. I got it. So when I got to college, it was actually my older brother, Dave, and a few buddies. They had this idea to play this New Year's Eve party. This band that they had on paper, like a joke band that never actually played for a few years. It was all just college shtick. Mm-hmm. It's guys who grew up in the era of Fletch and Stripes, living life as Chevy Chase and Bill Murray, running shtick nonstop.
Right.
They put a New Year's Eve party together and said, we're finally going to play because now we have a drummer. And that drummer was me. And I was like, you guys know I've never played drums before. I talk a good game, but I don't really play. And they said, that'll be perfect. So we got together and rehearsed once. We learned 10 or 12, maybe 14 covers. And it was a couple of Beatles songs, early Beatles. You Can't Do That was one of them because it had the big break. I told you before, blah, blah, blah. You know, and I remember being very nervous about that one. Got to put that in there just right. And a few Ramones songs and some Clash songs and maybe a Springsteen song, you know, just a bizarre little set list. And we learned a few songs and we played them all 2 or 3 times each at this New Year's Eve party. So I'm a freshman in college. I'm at this house in Nashville, New Year's Eve. And I walked out of that gig and said, we need to be a band, guys. And they all looked at me like I was crazy. And I said, no, seriously, let's do this. Let's be a real band. Because at that point in time, my North Star had shifted from the Beatles, who no longer existed, to REM, who very much existed at that point. And I'd seen them in high school, and now now their first album, Murmur, was out, and they were my everything. Like 4 dudes who met in college. We can do this. Let's go. And so for the next 3 years, we played that same New Year's Eve party. So in 3 years, we played 3 gigs, or I guess 2 actual full years. But, New Year's Eve, 83, 84, and 85, we played. And every time I was like, can we just be a real band? And all the same guys were like, you're nuts. What are you talking about? Like, I'm an accounting major, dude. I have a career ahead of me. I'm just like, who cares about college? So when the summer of 86 rolled around, I was going into my 4th year of college, and I decided I was a broadcasting major. I thought by then I'll just be a sportscaster and get to ESPN or something.
Sure.
Because that had blown up in the mid 80s. And the kid whose drum kit I had sat behind in 12th grade for the very first time, he was in Atlanta and he was playing guitar, and he called me in my dorm in the fall of 86 and said, hey, I'm going to drop out of college and go back home to Atlanta and start a band. Do you want to go? Or what he actually said was, I'm going to go to Boston, because he was going to college in Massachusetts. You're playing drums, right? And I said, oh, yeah. Oh, all the time. And he said, all right, let's do it. So finally, somebody that I knew, it was important to me that it be with friends. Like, it never dawned on me to just move to Nashville and put an ad in the local little fanzine, drummer needs a band. I never thought that at all. I wanted to do it with a friend or someone I knew. And he said, I want to go start a band. Do you want to do it? And I said, sure. And we had been music friends. Like, our friendship was based on, we liked all the same bands. And so it was perfect. And I said, yeah, I'll be there. And so that was in September of 86. And I said, I got to finish the semester. I got to get some money to buy a kit, but I'll get down there sometime in the new year. And in February of 87, I moved to Atlanta with $1,200 and very little time spent at a drum kit ever. I mean, if I look back, I'd probably played. I 100% for sure had played less than 15 hours total of sitting at a kit in my life. But I was like, yeah, I'm ready to do this. Let's go. And so I got to Atlanta, and I got off the Greyhound bus, and his roommate, who was there to pick me up because his car was working that day, was Chris Robinson. And so that's when I met Chris. He's the first person that I saw in Atlanta, Georgia. And we all moved into a house together, and I bought a kit a couple weeks later. My $1,200 went down to $700 real fast. And then I was like, I got to buy a drum kit. And I went to a store called Rhythm City, and I walked in. I said, I got a gig next month, which was a lie, but I needed the guy to know I was serious. And I said, I need a drum kit. I need everything. I have nothing. I don't even have a drum key. I need everything I might need for a gig. And I walked out with a receipt for $699.99. The guy literally handed me a big pink receipt and a penny. And I was like, right on, let's rock. And I played my first gig on I moved down there in February. Played my first gig on May 30th.
Yep.
And then joined Chris's band, Mr. Crow's Garden, that's like in July or August that summer. And then we got real busy. And then 2 years, I moved there in February of 87. And in May of 89, we started pre-production for Shake Your Moneymaker.
Yep.
And in February of 90, so it was 3 years to the week that I moved to. I moved there February 20th, and I think Shake Your Moneymaker came out like February 13th, 1990. So just under 3 years from me moving there, the first album was in stores, which is a absurd story. And I knew it at the time. I was like, this is not supposed to go this quickly for someone that really had never done this before.
Yeah.
So I always felt like I was playing catch up. I felt like I was behind the 8 ball from the jump, because right away I was playing with guys who were 18 or 19. I was 21 when I moved there, and I was playing with 18 and 19-year-olds. And at that time, at that age, that's still a little bit of a difference. You know, it's like I'd already been on a college campus for 3.5 years. I was the adult of the group, you know, like I'm sort of the responsible guy, you know, and I'm just
you're the guy who could buy beer, right?
That's exactly right. I was buying a lot of Hams, bred in the land of sky blue waters, Hams beer. We drank Hams beer like there was no tomorrow. Trust me.
When you guys met George Draculius, George was
spring of '88, so about a year after I'd moved to Atlanta.
Yeah, and in the book, which let's plug the book here.
Oh, bring it on!
I love the Bill Burr review, the Angela's Ashes of Rock Memoirs, and we see our author. Steve Gorman there. It looks like he's trying to think of another synonym for dysfunction.
Pretty much.
Yeah, there it is. But you mentioned that Draculius tried to get you guys to sound more like the Rolling Stones, or told you to go listen to the Rolling Stones. What was the sound of the band like before that?
It was when I first joined Mr. Crow's Garden, it was very, very REM, Dream Syndicate, the Long Riders. Those were the big influences on the band. I mean, REM is this ubiquitous cloud over every Southern 80s indie band. Like they created their own universe, and all these bands followed along. So they're huge in that. But Chris was really into the Dream Syndicate. The Paisley Underground was very big to him. The Dream Syndicate, the 3 o'clock, a lot of psychedelic, jangly pop, but then also very much loved Green on Red and the Long Riders, like what you would now call Americana. And back then it was just, maybe it was country rock. I don't even know if there was a word for it. But, you know, Chris loved the Byrds. But REM loved the Byrds, like that jangly guitar of REM. When the REM first hit, people said, "Oh, they're just kind of Byrds like." But Chris was heavily into the Byrds. Loved Roger McGuinn, loved Crosby, and all those records. Graham Parsons was always one of his big points. So it was real easy to say Mr. Crow's Garden is an REM wannabe, but it was only because I think Rich and Chris both had a lot of the same influences, like the things that REM listened to, or Peter Buck was certainly a fan of. They grew up listening to that same stuff. And obviously REM was a huge part of they were that, like I said, they were my North Star for what a band is supposed to be. That said, I didn't ever look at Bill Berry, who I loved their drummer, Bill Berry, but I never played like that. He plays in front and pushes the beat, and I always played on the backside of things. So there was a lot more to it than just simply another jangly REM band. There was plenty of bands like that in the South, and we had some of that, but there was more going on with Mr. Crow's Garden. Chris, as a lyricist, was way more heavily influenced by Steve Wynn of the Dream Syndicate. That was like his main guy. Okay. When I look back and think about it, 87, 88, that's kind of where we were. When George first saw us, you know, George never said you should sound like the Rolling Stones. What he said was to me, it wasn't even to Chris, it was to me and Rich. He said, you pull back, you groove like Charlie. And he looked at Rich and said, your right hand, like you should put in check out some open tuning stuff. Like you play like Keith, but you don't even know it. Like his point was, you guys have some real strengths and you're not aware of what they are yet. You're not playing to your strengths. You're trying to do all these different things. And when it works, it's because you've circled in on what you're good at. So let me just tell you, this is what you're good at. This other stuff, you're not there. It doesn't work as well. Right. And we had never met anybody that told us that we trusted. I mean, if people did give us advice or gave us opinions, we probably would have laughed at them and said, you know, whatever. But George was just the first guy we loved him and we trusted him, and we thought, well, he knows what he's talking about. Like, for whatever reason, we just clicked with him. So when he said to Rich, he said, specifically said, like, you should check out some open tuning stuff. And Rich said, like, well, we all love Nick Drake and he plays in all these tunings. And George was like, no, I mean like open G, man. go put on those Stones records again. But listen to them with different ears now. There's find some similarity, find something in there. And then he said to me, he goes, you push the band and then you pull the band, like you're in front of the beat, you're behind the beat. When you're behind the beat, that's when you're at your best. Mm-hmm. When you get excited and push, everything falls apart, but you have a really nice natural groove. It's a backbeat. You kind of pull things. And those are little things to say to musicians. The thing is, we were smart enough for the first time. We all picked up on, we should listen to this guy. I look back now and I just think, thank God we paid attention to someone who was giving us good advice. Because I'm sure somebody else with a different approach we may have ignored, and they may have had the same smart things to say. That's what happened. It was not, I want you to sound like the Stones at all. It was a few touch points. For the same time, he said, go back and put on, Fillmore East again, Allman Brothers. Go back and listen to, we were Southern kids, but we were kids of the 80s, and we were listening to REM and Let's Active and the DBs. And he was like, yeah, but there's other great music that's inspired by, I don't know about you, Kevin, but I grew up, and the kids that really loved Skynyrd and were listening to the Allman Brothers in the late 70s in my town, I looked at them like they just don't, they want to beat me up. Like they're like the guys in the pickup trucks, and they are drinking whiskey. Yes. And they want to fight. And that's Rebel Flag. Come on. And I wasn't that guy. I was listening, I was really into Devo and the B-52s and kind of weird, new wave stuff for the time. And so for George to say, go listen to the Allman Brothers, I was like, really? And then, of course, I put them on with fresh ears at 22 years old. And I'm like, this is magical. This is fucking beautiful. It's got nothing to do with these guys in the Pennyroyal Mall parking lot. And for the same matter, another band he referenced was AC/DC. He said, go listen to AC/DC. That rhythm section, they don't rock, they swing. And they really do. Like the classic era AC/DC, Power Age and Highway to Hell, the last 3 or 4, they're obviously Back in Black's their biggest album, but the last few Bon Scott records, when they were really figuring out who they were, that rhythm section, they swing like crazy. Mm-hmm. I've always said anybody can sound like AC/DC, but you can't feel like them. Like it's swing, it's got bounce, it's got life. And so George never said be like these bands. He said just go check in with those bands and then figure out, where you're at your best.
Yeah. So
I think I will say this. I think we would have gotten there. We might have gotten there on our own, but he certainly sped the process up. Like I said, when someone looks at you and says, here's what you're good at. Right. Boy, he just shaves off like a couple years of experience. It's like, oh, thank you. It was like a real shortcut.
Yeah, you're beating the learning curve a little bit at that point.
Yeah, for sure. And unless you are Prince, you need a producer. And Michael Jordan needed a coach. Everybody needs somebody to go, hey, I can't do it, but I can show you how you can be at your best. And that's what a producer's job ultimately is. And that's what he was for us.
Yeah.
Very cool. Now, you guys worked with a variety of different producers, Don Was, George Drakoulias, and there was a guy named Kevin. I don't recall the last name.
Kevin Shirley. Yeah.
Kevin Shirley. Yeah. Could, as a drummer, what's most important in a producer? Is it the encouragement of collaboration? Is it the push to try new things? Is it, hey, everybody pull your head out of your ass and we're going to do this? Like what?
It's all about the context. It's about the right guy at the right time. George was the right guy for us when we met him. Somebody like Kevin Shirley, I don't know that he would have been great for us in 1988. You know what I mean? He was the guy we met in 1998. That guy he would have seen us in 88 and been like, no, come back in 2 years, kids. Like George was our age. George was like a peer. I got along with everybody we worked with. I think I worked well with every producer. I'm just all about, for better or worse, my goal is always let's all get on the same page Let's all it's team. Everything's a team to me. You know, everything's a basketball team. Like, I'm happy to be the point guard or the center. Just tell me what I need to be. You know, like, let's all agree to what we're going to do, and let's all go do it together. And sometimes that's worked out better than others. I mean, like I do sessions in Nashville, so not that many anymore. I did a whole lot when I first moved here, and then I became more. And then I got back on the road, and you know, if you're a session guy, you're a session guy, and if you're not, you're not. So, but I learned a whole lot in the first year I was in town, because I worked with more than a dozen different producers on different projects, and right away it's like that really like this laser focus on delivering what's best for the song and getting the hell out of the way. Like, that's a session drummer's job. It's like, hey man, your artistic expression, not interested. Like, come in here, and if you can give something, great, but if it's too much, I'm going to tell you, and you better not have a problem with that. And so I learned a lot about that sort of vibe. It's different when you're in your own band, that you start and it's just like the Black Crowes or Mr. Girls Garden and the Black Crowes. Like, it's our band. If we do it, it's right. And that's freeing, but it's also, it can also lead to some really lazy decision making, because it's like, it's our band, it doesn't matter, you know what I mean? So every band has to walk that fine line. If you got to hold yourself accountable, if you're a session drummer, those lines are very clear. The producer tells you to do something, you do it, and if you don't, you're out. You know, so I had that experience when I toured with Stereophonics. It's a great Welsh band for a year. In 2003 and 4, I learned very much, which is something I'd never really thought about in the Black Crowes. And before that, it's like, get out of the singer's way. Like the Kelly Jones, their singer, is this incredible. He's one of my favorite rock singers. He was before I had met him. He was certainly after I met him. But you know, those songs are just like, as the drummer, it's like, yeah, you want to push it along, you want to give it the energy, but it's like, man, don't do anything that gets in the way of that voice. My God, it's connecting with people, and I'm seeing that every night. With the Black Crowes, we didn't talk about those things. You know, like I said, we were our own band. We learned how we were doing it. You know, Rich was painting his own landscapes sonically with his guitar, and I'm just playing along and finding cool stuff to play. It was just kind of a weird, non-intentional. When it was at its best, it was pretty magical that we just found a way to make these songs sound the way they sounded. So just to answer your question, context is everything. Like, Kevin Shirley came along at a time when the Black Crowes needed somebody to say, stop the bullshit. We're not going to jam. We all know you can play. You can play whatever you want to play, but let's put it focused into some songs, and let's play some straight. Here's some rock and roll songs, and it's okay to have a song that just exists in order to be fun and cool. And we had stopped thinking. We had never thought about that, actually. Like, even Shake Your Moneymaker, that wasn't our thinking. It was, we were trying to make the greatest rock album of all time. That would mean we wanted to change people's lives with how important music was. And Kevin came along at a time when we needed somebody to say, get your head out of your own ass and just rock. It's fun. Like, blast it out, turn it up too loud and hit too hard. Come on. And you know, it's funny, that album's a real divisive album within Black Crowes fans. Some people love it, some people can't stand it, but it certainly did the job of reminding us that at the end of the day, we're just supposed to be a rock and roll band. It's okay to just go let it rip.
That would have been By Your Side, right?
Yeah.
I come down on the side of liking it. I enjoyed a lot of the songs on that album. I think it's really good. And
if you put on the record that came out before that one, it's an abrupt. I mean, it's a massive, like, left turn. So in the context of things as they came out, Three Snakes and One Charm it was a very different world. But you know, 25 years later, you just put it on. It's like, it's a pretty good rock and roll record. You know?
Okay, now while we're kind of starting it By Your Side and trickling backwards, what was the thinking there?
Your guess is as good as mine. It was just a months long argument that Chris wanted that to be the cover and no one else did, and somehow he got his way, and it was.
So we're talking about Amorica, and we're not talking about Smell the Glove. We're talking about Amorica.
Yeah.
But it was kind of the Spinal Tap reference. It kind of sounds like it went down some of the same path.
And again, all these years later, I mean, that record's almost 30 years old now. The music's the music, and that's what people will think of. We talked about it a lot, which is, we've made this beautiful album. Why are you gonna? Do you not get that everyone's first impression is that image, and it's going to turn off an awful lot of people?
Yep.
And that's exactly what it did. And not just buyers and not just record stores who didn't want to carry an album with pubic hair on the cover. It was an awful lot of folks. I mean, it looks like something a band who's just trying to piss off Tipper Gore would put on their album cover. It was just like, yeah, rock and roll. Like, this is not a record for dumb teens who want to, walk around and look at Hustler covers. It was
a gimmick that for a band that didn't need the gimmick.
Well, that's exactly how Chris didn't see it as a gimmick. He had a whole mindset. He thought it said something about the state of the hypocritical this, that, and the other in American society.
Mm-hmm.
And the point to that was, but that's not going to come across. No one's going to get it. And again, I think I said in the book, nothing speaks more to the dysfunction of the band that there was a vote that was like 6 versus 1, and the 1 won the vote somehow. You just wore everyone down, and finally everyone's like, fuck it, whatever.
Yeah.
And again, the thing that matters is the music. And now, all these years later, if somebody listens to it, they'll be like, that's a great record. But at the time, it was really damaging, and it was really not just damaging commercially, it was damaging for the esprit de corps of the band, if you will.
Yeah. How much did the dysfunction of the band shape the band versus how much did it limit the band?
Depends on who you ask. I mean, my opinion is it certainly shaped. I wouldn't throw it all out with the bathwater. I mean, that tension. There's a lot of energy in that, and we needed that energy in those early years. But ultimately, this is the way I see it. Once you become something, like once we were the Black Crowes.
Mm-hmm.
It's you have to acknowledge that your status has changed, your context has changed. If you're a band on your way up, it's okay to punch up. You know what I mean? It's punk, man. It's rock and roll. Right. It's throw down authority.
Getting kicked off the ZZ Top tour.
Right. Yeah. All great. Once you've sold millions of records, you can't punch down. You can't punch. You just got to be what you want to be. And let the chips fall where they may. I mean, that's the way I looked at it. Again, my opinion is, what do you like the idea that that dysfunction was, I don't know. At some point, it's not fueling better songs. It's not fueling better gigs. Right. It's just you're making things really unnecessarily unpleasant, but you're dealing with if somebody's been there their whole life, they don't know any other different. That's just, like a really stressful day for me might be just your Tuesday, it's impossible. See, that's the thing about bands. It's all about chemistry. And so you can look back and say, I wish it had been different. But the fact of the matter is what it was, produced some amazing music, and it produced some great highs and some really deep lows. And it's all, in the end, it all balances out. It's just what it was. I'm glad that I'm still here. I'm glad I didn't get buried by it, because at times I felt like it was going to bury me, Yeah. So, but again, in 1987, when I moved to Atlanta, if you had handed me a piece of paper that said, this is what's going to happen for the next 25 years, are you in? I would have been like, you damn right. I mean, I would have, of course.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm signing up. Where do I sign? Yeah. Let me sign twice.
Yeah.
So it's
get it notarized.
It's all good. My when when the book came out, a lot of people thought it was I just think the book is full of two things: gratitude and sadness. And I'm cool with that. I think it was amazing. And I can look at it for what I thought it could have been. It's always a drag when something doesn't, we talked about Steve Gorman Sports earlier, I mean, I'm actually really okay with where Steve Gorman Sports ended. It was just like, by design, it wasn't going to be Colin Cowherd. It wasn't going to be the Dan Patrick Show.
Right.
And we took it further than I ever would have thought possible. And then on the other hand, I think the Black Crowes could have been that next. I think that the Black Crowes could have been the once every 20 years, like Aerosmith or even the Stones, or certainly, one of those bands that with the same lineup for all these years, and we could have just hung in there and done the thing the way you're supposed to do it. Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. I mean, it could have been one of those all-timers, and I don't think that's where the Black Crowes are. And well, I mean, they're not by any definition, and I think it could have been. So that's a bit of a drag, but what it was still pretty amazing.
Yeah, there is a quote in the book that there are a few that really stood out, but this one especially. You said Chris and Rich were always going to be who they were. It was up to me to manage my life accordingly. Was this revelation that you had at the time, or is this reflecting back? Because this is profound. That's a profound statement. That is applicable in all areas of life.
No, it was
everybody.
It was the late 90s when I finally started coming around to those kind of things. 97, 98. Just recognizing. It's hard to admit. Not that you've been had, but that you have fooled yourself. It's easy to say someone fooled me. That's not a problem. The problem we all have is shit. I fooled myself.
Yeah.
And I just had this expectation. I thought when the band hit and when we found success that it would. I thought it would humble everyone. I thought everybody would be grateful and think, holy crap, now we got to hold on to this. Now, I just expected there to be this sense of, let's look at where we are and how do you manage this? And how do you, and then I thought there'd be a sense of, well, who's done this? Who can we go to and ask for advice? Because there's a bunch of people that have already done this.
Right.
Maybe we should seek out their counsel. Like that's that's what I thought made sense. And my partners didn't see things like that. Everything was in the moment and very just reactive, not proactive. But that's who they'd always been. And I did it to myself. I told myself that would change for no reason other than I really wanted that to be the case.
Yeah.
And you get to a point in life where you go, I think anybody can look back and say, when did I actually feel like things were lined up? And it's almost always when everything was just on the table, when it was the most honest and the most authentic. Even if it wasn't good, it was real and you knew where you stood.
Right.
And I think everybody in the band, I mean, I imagine they would say the same of whatever their problems were with me at the time. Everybody just assumed everyone's going to come around to their way of thinking because that's what we do as people sometimes. So I was in my late 20s or I guess I was in my early 30s, and it just started to really hit me like, wait, the only thing I can possibly control in this is me. And then it's embarrassing to realize it took me that long to get there. It's like, oh, I knew that. I knew that when I was 20. I knew that when I was 15. Why did I lose sight of it? Like, oh shit. But hopefully you don't have to relearn the same thing more than a couple times in life, and then you can move forward. Yeah.
That's cool.
I think all bands, I was going to say, I think all bands have the similar, it sounds so hokey for rock and roll, but it's all about values and it's all about communication. You got to have common values. It just makes sense. And you have to be able to communicate and you have to put on the table, like everything I assumed everybody was thinking, they had their own thoughts. They assumed, everyone assumes everyone sees the world they do. We did anyway within the band. And it's not how it works. And once you figure that out, it's like, oh, okay, well, this makes it a little easier.
Right.
Definitely. You've had the opportunity to play with a host of incredible musicians and tour with bands, a lot of our favorites. Do you have any favorite stories from those tours and those times, or somebody that stands out as like, oh, this person was the best?
I mean, there's just countless things that are like, this was pretty great. You know, I've probably talked more about the Jimmy Page tour than anything else, just because obviously it's Jimmy Page, and people, for a drummer to play Led Zeppelin songs with Page is pretty ridiculous and cool. And that was every bit of what I would have hoped it could be when it all came down to it. But I mean, every year we were on the road, things happen. In 1991, we had the band Jellyfish out with us for 5 or 6 weeks. Jellyfish put out 2 albums in the early 90s, and those 2 albums are there's only a handful of 2-album bands that you can put on a list next to Jellyfish. I mean, they're both perfect records, and they were amazing live, just great. And I look back on some of those, like hearing them play the Logical Song by Supertramp, which is a song I never wanted to hear again, but they ripped into it one night, and I stood on the side of the stage and I was like, God, that's a great song. And this band, it took them to play it in this setting in like Tucson or wherever we were for me to recognize it. I mean, that was like an amazing moment for me, and one of my favorite, Andy Sturmer is one of my favorite singers. He's also one of my favorite drummers, and that's not fair. There's just countless times when I would be on the side of the stage watching someone else play, or on stage. We played in Toronto in December of '94, right after Amorica came out. We played the Opera House, which is a tiny venue in Toronto. And in the encore, Bobby Keys and Chuck Leavell and Ronnie Wood got up on stage with us. Wow. And Mick Jagger was there, but he stayed on the side of the stage and wouldn't come out, despite everyone going like, "Come on, man!" And it's good that he didn't, because the place would have exploded.
Right.
But like there's just moments like that, where I just look back and go, "Yeah, it's just great." When I was with Stereophonics, we played Earl's Court in London 2 nights. And Jimmy Page came down just to hang out before the show. We're hanging. It's great to see him. And then Ronnie Wood turns up, and then he jumps up on stage that night and plays with us. And, I'm just sitting there thinking, like, I'm here playing with this band that I was a fan of before I'd ever met them. And now we're friends, and now I'm playing with them. And Jimmy and me and Jimmy are still buddies. And hey, Ronnie Wood's up here playing. There's just all these moments where, and I don't know if Ronnie's solo was good. I don't remember. I don't care. It's just we played darts backstage and I beat him. That's all that matters. There's just so many of those that I look back on, and all I think is, that's just great. I don't ever think like, well, of course that happened. I mean, none of it should have happened. In the way that all the best stories are. It's like, just one thing led to the next, and I did the best I could at the moment, and it's all been pretty cool, in the grand scheme of things. The things I would change are all internal. They're not. Everybody wishes they were a little wiser, a little sooner. That's all.
Yeah. You talk in the book about touring with Jimmy Page. And how that came to an abrupt end. And at the time you didn't know why, but later you found out why. So talk a little bit about that conversation with Jimmy Page somewhat after the fact.
Well, he had a conversation with Rich Robinson, our guitarist, that displeased him. Now, he was already dealing with a bad back, and he had some issues going on. And I think it really was the final straw that broke the camel's back kind of thing. I have been told since my book came out, and that Rich says that conversation never happened. I don't know why Jimmy would have told me and told other people that it had. But it is, and at the time when I heard that story, it was profoundly upsetting. And I've had some people react to that in a way that makes me think I wasn't as clear. And when I wrote it, like what upset me wasn't, it was upsetting that we lost the end of the tour. It was upsetting that, there could have even been more dates later. We might have been in the studio with Jimmy, which I think anybody in the world would love to be in a recording studio with Jimmy Page. I mean, he not only wrote, but he produced those Led Zeppelin records. I'd love to see that guy in the studio. But it was just a person to person thing. I was so offended by the just people, the bad people politics, like just the rudeness of that moment. I mean, that's what drove me crazy. And again, I mean, I my version of events, what I was told I've been a part of that conversation with Jimmy on more than one occasion. And now, Rich can say that never happened. Somewhere in between all that, the reality did happen. I feel pretty strongly that I know what I'm talking about. But that was one of those moments that it supersedes rock stuff. It's just people stuff. It's like when someone says, "Hey, can I help?" The answer is almost always, it should be, "Of course. Thank you." The answer is just simply thank you. It's not, "No, we're good." So that's what really drove me crazy about that particular thing. I mean, when Jimmy told me the story, I'd already quit the band. At that moment, I never thought I would be back in the Black Crowes. So it wasn't like, on an entirely different set of reasons, I'd already decided to move on. So it wasn't like it impacted my relationship to the band. It was just simply, it's just people stuff. If like the first time we met Robert Plant, we opened for him in 1990. He was great to us. He was so wonderful. And hell, man, I saw him a couple years ago. He still looks at me like it's 1990. Hey, kid, how are you? And I'm just, but I'm just one of hundreds of young guys that Robert Plant has always been that way to. He's he was great to the Black Crowes. He's great to all kinds of other musicians, and you just have relationships that it's not about, oh my God, that's Robert Plant. After a while, it's just, that guy's great. What a nice guy. How cool is that? Like the limited time we have sometimes with people is when it's always special and always cool. You just want to protect that,
Yeah.
I'm friends with Ringo Starr, and I say that knowing, well, he's got a million friends, but anytime I see him, if I'm with him, he's great and he's gracious and he's we're not pen pals. We don't text each other. It's not that. And Jimmy and I were never that. And it's on the one level, it's just working relationships, but beyond anything else, it's just people being nice to people and people being human and that kind of stuff. That's what wound me up about that whole story. It was it's just not cool.
Right. Do you go back and listen to Black Crowes records?
No, I don't. I sometimes on like Sirius XM in the car, something will come up on the 90s. In my cloud, also, I'll put in the cloud. I'll just put on my music app and just hit random play, which I like to do that too. And so there's Black Crowes music in there, but that's not the albums. That's like B-sides or things that I just have copies of. But when I hear things, I remember every now and again I'll hear something and I'll just be like, man, that is bad, man. That's good, But I don't go seek it out. But there's very little that I wouldn't think, man, it's pretty good.
Yeah,
it's awesome. I mean, the performance is even if there's songs that I would say that songs kind of, the performances are good. I dig what everybody was trying to do at the very least.
Yeah.
But more often than not, if I hear something, I think, man, that's pretty great.
Yeah. Incredible groove to it. That's for sure. Yeah.
I hope so. I'm certainly trying.
This one right here.
That's unimpeachable, top to bottom.
A lot of people, a lot of people go with Shake Your Money Maker, and you can't fault that. But when you got to Southern Harmony Musical Companion,
I think that was the best example. That's everybody at their best. That's that thing of like 3 years after meeting George, we were working to our strengths in a way that I don't think we ever did again.
Yeah.
And that's okay. I mean, even the best bands, there's a 3 or 4 album run everybody has where it's just like fantastic, and we had that, and I'm cool with that. In the grand scheme of things, the fact that we had that is more than enough.
Yeah. There's a groove on that album from the opening riff and Sting Me all the way through. It's
and that's what you want a record to be. Like, if you can put it on in the back, you got people over and it's on in the background, and it just, whether people have heard it or not, everybody's, it's all in my mind, like a Meters album is the perfect barometer. You put it on and everybody's at the crudité and then you're pouring a drink, but it's just always feels okay underneath. It's Little Feat records are like that too.
Yes, they are.
There's people might not know those songs inside and out, but they sure as hell feel them. And I think Southern Harmony has that from top to bottom. It just does the job.
So you've been very generous with your time, and I don't want to take too much more of it, but I do want to talk about the band that you started just as the Black Crowes was breaking up for what should have been the last time. And for most people, they would say it is, but the band Trigger Hippy. You started
Trigger
this
Hippy is
2014, right?
Trigger Hippy started in 2004, the first time Nick, the bassist, and I jammed. I mean, we didn't call it Trigger Hippy, but I moved to Nashville in 2004, and shortly thereafter, Nick and I jammed at a bar in East Nashville called the Family Wash. And the first night we met, we just were like, man, we're like a real rhythm section. It's like you jam with people and you feel good all the time, but this felt different. And we spent years saying, man, we got to put a band together one of these days. It's just one of those things you say. Now he had a brand new baby. He had a 4 and a 2 and a brand new baby, and I had a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old, but not the brand new baby when we first met. So we weren't in let's start a new full-time band mode, but we were both going through things in life. We recognized we just became great friends right away, and musically very copacetic. And it wasn't until 2011 we actually said, okay, and Nick's a great songwriter. He has wonderful songs. And in 2011, we finally said, well, let's try to, right around the time I was starting Steve Gorman Sports, like the Crowes were kind of done. And I thought, well, I've got some time. And I had been, at the time I was, Nick was, when we would play or jam, Nick always sang. And I said, well, let's get a singer and let's find a couple guitar players and let's just see what we can do with some of your music. And so I'm buddies with Joan Osborne. So I called her and said, do you want to be in a band by any chance? And at that moment she said, yeah. And that led to us finding a lineup that made a record in 2012 and 13 that was released in 2014. And it was great. And we had a great time and we toured all around. And the way it came together, it wasn't built to last. It was like, this is fun. It's friends that respect each other, and we're all going to play some gigs and have a good time. And that's exactly what it was. But by the summer of 15, that had fallen apart. Everybody has lives. Everybody has their own careers. It just was, it was like a side project. And Nick and I felt like there was something more here. And now that we've done this, maybe we get find some people that want to stay and let's really turn this into something. And then it's weird. I've said this a million times. It's really true. The older I've gotten, the more patient I've gotten. It's kind of counterintuitive, but instead of rushing into things, we were like, well, let's just wait and see if we find what the right people, whoever that is, whatever that means. And so for this version of the band, which to us is the first version that was truly built to last, like by design, we put a record out in 2019 and started touring pretty heavy. And then, of course, the world ended. And now we're just starting to pick the pieces back up. But Trigger Hippy, we're going to record some more this fall. We'll have new music available early in 23. And then we'll get out and see if we can't, hit the road and get some gigs under our belt again. And I don't approach it like I did, 30 years ago. I don't want to go out and play 150 shows a year. I don't even want to play 100 shows a year. I'm good doing what I'm doing, but we want to get a lot busier than we've been, obviously, for the last 2 years. The band's great. Like we just have a great time. We love playing together. The shows are all cool. It's one of those bands, like everybody who sees it digs it. And unlike like I've talked about my nephew's band earlier, we don't have that young energy of we're gonna go out and kill ourselves. That's not the plan at all. It's a really nice, I dig it. It grooves and it rocks and it does everything that I like music to do. And I don't have, there's not a master plan. There's not a grand vision for where we're trying to go. We just want to write and record good songs and go play them. It's pretty simple.
Love it.
Yeah.
Love it.
All right. Well, Drew, you have any other questions for Steve tonight?
I mean, I feel like we could sit here and I could grill you for an hour, but maybe we'll do it next time you're in Louisville or something like that. But no, just thank you so much for your time. It was incredible just to get to talk to you. Thank you so much for your generosity and just really in awe of the spirit of gratitude that comes through and how you talk about all this stuff. It's just really impressive and inspiring. So thank you.
Well, thank you guys. I appreciate it. I've said this before, may have touched on this earlier in the show, and I've told you before, Kevin, but again, from the Steve Gorman sports world, we were always and will always be in your debt. That was a good, that connection, seriously, like you were, it was just knowing somebody gets it. And I think you were responsible for a lot of people picking up on that. And so always meant the world to us.
Well, that's, very generous, but thank you.
Yeah.
And it proved that through Twitter at that point in time, you could meet people and make real friends.
Yeah. The golden age of Twitter.
Looking back on the golden age of Twitter, yes.
Yeah.
Well.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, right on.
Also, well, first of all, I want to give you a chance. Tell people where they can find you on social media, Steve.
I'm still fairly active on Twitter, SGS Fox, which I would change, but everybody keeps telling me don't lose your blue verification mark, and I don't even know if that matters. There is a guy on Twitter at Steve Gorman who has never tweeted, and I want to find that guy and take his name. And I've tried to DM. I'm like, dude, come on, man, hook me up. But Instagram and Facebook, I'm not. I still have never come around to. I'm there, but whatever. If you want to find me, you can.
Yeah.
SGS Fox is where you can find me if you want to hear what I'm thinking for a moment at any given time.
Yeah. And Steve Gorman
and then Steve Gorman Rocks, the radio show, that's on Steve Gorman Rocks is easy to find. Just at all platforms, Steve Gorman Rocks.
Mm-hmm. And your co-host April is a good follow on Instagram as well. So.
And then Trigger Hippy is Trigger Hippy, also very hippie with a Y, not an IE.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to get people to shake their hips, that's easy to find as well.
Yep. And some good concert footage, little clips from this past weekend as well. So people can find that. All right. Drew, how about yourself?
Yep. I'm on Twitter at DrewCrawley63 and Instagram at Drew.Crawley63. So I'm an asshole on Twitter, and Instagram's for following music stuff. So
beautiful.
You can find our show. We're on YouTube. Our shows drop every Wednesday. So hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out. We are also on podcasts on Apple, Spotify, and Google. You can find us on Instagram. You can find us on Facebook. We're on Twitter a little bit, but not as much as probably should be. So, but you can check us out anyway. But also want to say happy birthday, Steve Gorman. We got a birthday boy coming up here pretty soon. So happy birthday to you. Cheers to you.
Cheers. Right on. I'll get my last little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Celebrating my own 57th. Very nice.
I'm catching up with you quicker than I would want, but I'm catching up with you.
It does not slow down, man.
Well, on behalf of Drew and our very special guest, Steve Gorman, until next time, cheers, love, and free bird.
Thanks, fellas.
Thank y'all. Good night.